Christian community is unprecedented in Washington, D.C. There has never been a president whose door is more open to policy being shaped by anointed believers who go right in there and have access to him and pray with him and meet with him. It's an incredible thing. He's a very unusual gift mix. He's really a prophet with a business gift, for wealth creation. But what's interesting about Trump is that he just operates by vision. He says if he can get a picture of what the future looks like, he doesn't need any professionals to tell him what to do. He never did that his whole life. He has what's called the power of prophetic intentionality. Once he gets a picture of the end, he zigzags his way to make it happen. It's like a word of wisdom, on how to intuitively move. Even what he did during the election, you say, oh, he gapped, he said this, he said that, he said about John McCain. Think of the genius of his own gaffes. As one of his friends said, I've known Donald Trump his whole life. He said he's got 15 people that are playing by a playbook, and they're all experienced, and half of them are evangelicals with an automatic rapport with the main market they got to get in. And along comes this guy who's totally an outsider. The only way he can stand out from the pack is to zig when they zag. So he intuitively does something that grabs the news cycle and makes everybody talk about what he's doing, so that the other 15 experienced politicians playing by the appropriate playbook are irrelevant. And he continued to zag when they zigged. And he continued to fumble into something controversial. And it was though by divine intuition he knew exactly how to arrest the attention of the conversation so that he was the only subject they were talking about. And I remember when I had friends of mine who were Cruz people and Mario Rubio people, and they were Ben Carson people. These were all fine pastors, anointed apostles, and discerning prophets. And I was the lone voice, the lunatic fringe, saying, I think it's Donald Trump. And I can remember the resistance I met when I was talking to them. But I'll tell you the one thing that kept coming back to me is the fact that America has gotten into the mess it's in because we've been doing business as usual, and it's going to take a divine interruption to put it on the right course. And I knew back then that the divine interruption wasn't going to be coming in an elegant package, because God is not necessarily very, very elegant about America right now. I'll tell you something else. I don't think he's so rip-roaring pleased with the church either. Now, I know that's going to go down like a rat sandwich in light of everything else we've been talking. But what do you think he's saying when he says, I'm going to take the most offensive possible vessel out of the drawer of utensils and tools, because the tools that would have been more refined and better equipped have not done it. I want you to know, Mike Pence tried to take a stab at resisting Jezebel in the state of Indiana. Everybody loves Mike Pence. Mike Pence. Oh, who's Mike Pence? He's the evangelical dreamboat for an electoral candidate. Squeaky clean and nice and polite and Christian. And Mike Pence tried to do a little legislation act that was going to protect the people of Indiana from having to bow the knee to disastrous LGBT requirements for bakers and florists and people that own chapels. And it's just basically it's the left-wing gay activists targeting evangelical Christians to make them submit. And if they don't submit, they'll punish them and put them out of business. Mike Pence was signing some legislation just saying that the businesses should have a right to be able to practice their business without having to bend the knee to somebody else's belief system. And immediately, all the big CEOs around the country, combined with all the news media, teamed up together and said they were going to pull their businesses out of Indiana. The business people in Indiana, including the Christians, got all nervous. Poor Mike Pence looked like a deer caught in the headlights, and I saw in that moment, this is not the man to stand down Jezebel in the next election. Because he folded on it. He's a perfect man to have as a vice president, but he's not going to be, and that's the church. The church means well, but the church kind of is naive. And then when we get out into the real battlefield and get punched in the nose for the first time, we back up and go, what's wrong with this? And we're mad at each other. So God took not an elegant Isaiah walking the halls of kings. He took a rough Samson with a history with Philistine babes. With a flash temper. And the strength of 10. Now, what's interesting about Trump, if you understand 7 mountains, he already mastered the media and entertainment mountain. He had 2 mountains under his feet before he went to politics. And Rush Limbaugh said something very intuitive. He said the thing the media is, the difference between Trump and every other politician is the media all makes the politicians back into a corner and play the game the way the media wants to play it. Donald Trump has taken the media on because they didn't make him, so they can't break him. Anyone else, the New York Times will take you apart. Donald Trump goes in there and takes on the New York, right there in the press conference. Hilarious. I'm sitting there watching the Academy Awards. You heard me go on these diatribes before. I'm watching the Academy Awards. All I'm getting is politics. I watched the Tony Awards. All I'm getting is politics. I decided to watch a Trump press conference. What do I get? Entertainment. When in the history of press conferences does a guy come out and go, "You're fake news, you're fake news, you're fake news"? These guys are sitting there like this is their pride, this is their pompous power. They're saying he's trying to shut down the freedom of the press. You're fake news anyway. Listen, I think this week he freaks him out constantly. He flipping freaks out. He says, "I think we ought to be investigating that Clinton transaction with the uranium. 20% of American uranium, is in the hands of the Russians. Somebody made money off of that. I think the Clinton Foundation did. Why don't you guys check that story out?" This is so adolescent. It's shocking. Picks a fight with the NFL. And everybody, Karl Rove goes, "Now he's done it, now he's screwed it, now he's really made a mistake. We'll never come out of this one. Oh my God, he's really stepping it this time." Well, let's just wait and see. Trump says, "It's not about me, it's not about Ray, it's not about the flag." Uh-oh. The left, I'll tell you, they put their foot in the poop on this one. They can't get it out. Rick Joyner said, he said after he figured out Trump, he said he's perfect. He is a wrecking ball. It's funny how my words, here's the thing, when you're a prophet, you speak the word of God, it'll go into the air, it'll be picked up by someone else with a bigger platform. They'll repeat exactly word for word what you said, but you put it in the atmosphere. I said Donald Trump's a wrecking ball of the spirit of political correctness. Next thing you know, magazine comes to me, "Oh, Donald Trump's a wrecking ball." I said, "Oh, here's a new one. I like this one. The left has experienced Trump derangement syndrome. Everywhere you go." Meanwhile, the left is manifesting Trump derangement syndrome again. I can throw these words out. I'm going to tell you the next one. Ready for it? I'm going to tell you before it pops. I'm going to explain. Russia's going to grab us. I'm going to say that everywhere you look, the left is angry. It's terrible branding. There's race fights, there's division, they're angry, they're pulling things down, they're fighting with people all the time. You know what it is? And then they're so obnoxious. In Hollywood, they're so obnoxious. Every time they have a microphone. At George Clooney, they're always condescending and obnoxious. I'm saying that pop culture in America has been dominated. It's media, it's arts, it's entertainment, it's academia. Pop culture has been dominated by progressives for so long that we've become a toxic, angry, frustrated, neurotic, fearful culture. You know why? Pop culture stands for pissed off progressives. Everywhere you look, they're shaking culture. You watch. Once I publish pissed off progressives is pop culture, boom, everyone's in. Well, you know what that is? Pop culture, pissed off progressives. You watch. I should have a trademark on these things. Anyway, I know I shouldn't get involved with these things. I should be talking about the love of Jesus right now. I did my best. I put someone up here that's endearing, young, millennial, nice, wonderful. How many of you love that? See? You got a good dose of the love of Jesus. They're right there. Now you got to get angry old prophets. Here's what we need in America right now. Trusty old prophets. So I'm reading Jeremiah. I'm trying to be loving. I'm reading Jeremiah. Jeremiah says, "See, this day I set you over nations and over the kingdoms." Now listen to this. How many words are negative versus positive when you've got a prophetic ministry that is called to shift a nation? You're called, Jeremiah, to root out, pull down. Read it. Chapter 1, verse 10. According to Bobby Connors last night, if you're not reading it in an actual Bible and it's digital, it's actual vaporware. You're not even remembering it. That's a fascinating theory. I'd like to get the data on that one, but he said it, so it must be true. I guess that makes sense to me. Gotta have an actual Bible. I use this. I underline and circle. Old school. These whippersnap, these people come up with their digital Bibles. I know what you do with that digital Bible. The moment you get digitally distracted, you check your digital text messaging. You never get a text message or an email here. This day I set you over kingdoms to root out, pull down, destroy, throw down, build and plant. 4/6 of our mandate in this Reformation is to demolish, root out, and destroy that which the enemy has infested into the culture, into the mainstream, into the mentality of the country. 4/6 of it. So everybody that wants to just go revival and go touch people, love people, bless people, and show them signs and wonders, let me tell you something. That does not work. Culture is obvious. I'm telling you something we should have figured out a long time ago. Culture isn't transformed by revival. Revival transforms God's people. But if God's people refuse to go into the institutions and invade the high places, then the nation doesn't change. We just have a surge of church attendance and ministry donor lists build up, and we're having a good time. But if the nation's in a critical condition, reformation has to happen. You know the difference between reformation and revival? You'll never forget it when I tell you this, because see, the Reformation is rooting out, pulling down, destroying, and throwing down what Satan has built into the institutions so that we can then restore and build and plant what God wants in its place. Does that make sense to you? And we're on the fringes of this process. I'm sorry. We're not in the dynamic centers of power we're supposed to be, because we, instead of going into all the world, we taught our kids and we taught ourselves that real spirituality is the separation from the world, as though we can change the world from a safe distance. You actually cannot change the world from a safe distance. You've got to get in there, and salt has to rub up against the decay. Some of the greatest heroes are the people that got to go where the darkness is. I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Where do you think the church is supposed to be? Where the gates of hell are located? The gates of hell are over Hollywood, we complain. They're over the New York Times, we complain. They're over, the deficit spending in Washington, we complain. Well, where is the church in the high places they're located? We should be in proximity to the gates of hell, not at a safe distance, prophesying and dropping long-distance intercessory bombs. And as much as I love Blue Eagle, gathering everybody for symbolic acts, whether it's in Azusa, LA, or whether it's in Washington, D.C., it has a negligible power or impact. I know I justify when I'm with them. I'm saying we created a spiritual vortex. Well, that's very good. We got a spiritual vortex. What comes through the vortex better go where the gates of hell is located. Otherwise, it's fantasy Christianity. Because we think we can change the world at a distance. You can't. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but principality. But wrestling is a close quarter, one-on-one contact, flopping around on the ground. We're dealing with flesh and blood. I don't think Christians ever understood that. We think we're dealing with the spirit realm. No, you're not. You're dealing with the spirit realm that got its hooks into disobedient flesh. That is the flesh you're actually wrestling with. It's what's behind it is a principality. But don't ever misunderstand, your battle is with people. If you ever get that one wrong, you're really in la-la land. Jesus said, man sowed, harvest. While men slept, an enemy came and planted tares amongst the wheat. And then Jesus goes and explains to his disciples. They said, what is that all about? He said, the harvest are the sons of the righteous. The tares are the children of the wicked one. I'll never forget what the Lord said. People still don't get that. Satan plants people.
Yeah, I think that.
Satan will plant someone in the Oval Office. Satan will plant somebody in the Supreme Court. Satan will plant somebody at the top of an MGM studio. Satan will plant a scriptwriter on HBO or a comedian on a TV. Because Satan needs mouthpieces in order to propagandize and defile a generation. You're wrestling with people who are empowered by principalities. Don't misunderstand. You're not in a disembodied battle with some spirit out there. It isn't connected to a person. You don't have a problem. Because all issues of earth are determined by earthlings. And if you want to know the reason why we got to move in these high places, is because both heaven and hell have the power to manifest on earth, depending on the level of agreement that people have with what wants to manifest. That makes sense? So I think we still have to get a game plan as to what does the terrain look like? What's the warfare look like? I don't think we really understand. But I'm going to tell you this, spiritually, we have to pull down, we have to pluck up, we have to uproot, and we have to have the love of Jesus to do it, but it's not going to look loving when it shows up. That's going to be the paradox. See, if you love somebody, you might stand in the way. I'll never forget Andrew Wallnau told me this story. He said, one night he's driving home there on the highways in Colorado, and the fog came in. The heavy fog came down on the road. How you doing, Leonard? Good to see you. Have you met my son over here? I want you to meet Carl. This is one of the great moments.